Welcome back from the break. This is still the pulse here on the Joy News channel. Now, Ghana's housing situation remains a blot on the conscience of authorities as the housing deficit continues to grow. Many can either not find a place to lay their heads for various reasons, or sometimes it's just not, you're not able to afford what is there. Affordability and availability is one challenge. Now, the situation is worse in urban centers of the country where demand for affordable housing has never been higher, but unfortunately, the supply is not keeping space. Today, we dive deep into the intricacies of this issue and explore potential solutions. In studio with us now is Ransford Amo. He is a development management consultant for Special Gardens, and they have been part of the Joy News Habitat Fair, which took place in September last year. And before that, though, let me paint the picture for you here in terms of the housing deficit we have in this country. So let me try to take you through how it is that today many people are not able to find accommodation that is quite suitable for them. Now look at this. In Ghana's housing deficit, our population of 19 years plus is around 16.5 million. Residential structures that we do have are around 5.8 million. So for population 19 plus, so it means that we're not even bringing in those who are below 19. So 19 years and above, 16.5. And our infrastructure, our housing available is around 5 million. Now, if we look at the 33% reduction in 2021, in 2010, we had around 2.8. When you were talking about housing deficit, then in 2010 it was 2.8. But in 2021, there's been some improvement, though, from 2.8 to 1.8 million, So that's the gap that we now have to deal with. So this is from the Africa Housing Finance. That's where we are sourcing this from. So is affordability the problem or what it is? Now, the average price of houses in 2021 for a one-bedroom apartment, you have to cough between 99,000 cedis and 136,000 cedis. For a two-bedroom apartment, which would suit for someone like me with a family of, say, 5, two-bedroom, 182,500 cedis and 225,520. So that's the range for you to get a decent two-bedroom apartment. For three-bedroom apartment, that's 335,000 and above. So that's the price range, for you to get these. Now, we understand that 12.7% of all dwelling units in Ghana were vacant in 2021. 12.7% of all dwelling units in Ghana were vacant in 2021. So, question is, why were they vacant? Is it because of the money issue or what is it? Okay. So this is what we do know, about the housing issue in Ghana. And our source is the Africa Housing Finance. That's where we're picking this from. I mean, the earlier one that paged the population against how much in terms of housing that we had, that was from the Ghana Statistical Service. The rest is from the Africa Housing Finance. So this is the issue. 12.7% of dwelling units in 2021 were vacant. Okay. Hi, AB. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, and you?
I'm good. What possibly could come to mind when you see this statistics that 12.7 were vacant? You have the houses, but people can't, afford them. What's the issue?
I think, very obvious, first and foremost, is affordability, right? Okay. The money. But based on what you said, it's like you're talking about two paradoxes, right? One is saying there's a deficit. The other is saying there's a lot that's, nobody's able to utilize.
Yes.
And that's because we are not matching demand and supply.
Okay.
So in some cases, there's a lot of supply. So that's your 12.7. In other cases, there's a lot of demand, and that's our deficit. And the reasons for not matching is a number of them. Okay. But maybe you can focus on one or two, which is first comes to price points.
Okay.
How much are these vacant homes costing? And if, let's say, somebody wants to rent it, can they afford to rent it? Then the second thing becomes, are they even really ready? There's a lot of structures you see in the country that looks ready, but they're not ready. They may not have all the right things to make it a safe home.
Okay.
So it looks like a vacant home, but it's not. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of uncompleted buildings in there. Those could be part of these statistics that make it look that way.
Okay.
But the biggest challenge of all of it is basically also our own policies. What are our policies doing to make sure we can match this demand and supply in other parts of the world, which is where sometimes I learned some of my trade and brought it here. When a developer is doing something, they can go to government and say, give me some tax reductions. And because of that, I'll put 10% of my development for this lower brackets. So there's a mixture.
Okay.
It's a high-end development, but it still has some mid or low-end folks in there because you sell that as the slightly lower end of your development because you got some incentives from government. So if it's an urban area, other people can actually afford to live there because that particular set of homes, that 10% set of homes, is like a price lower.
Am I right to then think that those of you who are developing for people to buy are not targeting the market where probably demand exceeds supply?
I wouldn't say we are not because there's different brackets. You have to look at the market to see what you want to do. Just like, there's a Toyota and there's a Maybach, right? So every developer looks at what they want to develop for. To be honest, most developers have looked into the affordable low-end market, which is where the real money is, because the numbers are there. If you look at the 1.8 million housing deficit, that means there's roughly 1.8 million people ready to be in a home. So imagine you can take a share of that. That's huge if you can match their price points and if you can make profit out of it, right? But there's also the challenge of the fact that you can't produce at that price point because of other factors like taxes, like even cost of materials, land costs, land challenges. All those factors are there. So it becomes, I've always said in most of my consulting gigs when I meet a lot of developers who kind of engage us to do is anybody who can break the barrier of trying to develop anything below $50,000 in a mass production probably could be a billionaire overnight in Ghana. Because that's where the people are, right? But again, what's the realistic thing you're going to do to make that happen? Does it mean that you are building mad houses? Because if you look at the cost of everything, even the labor cost now is quite high. You can't easily get to that. But I'm not saying it's not possible. It's possible. Somebody's just got to figure out how to do it efficiently and on a scale that will meet the demand that's out there.
But probably you're looking at the duration to break even and to start making profit. What if you spread that over a certain longer period, which of course could get you to, say, produce for or build, in this case, for the low-end market? Well,
if you're in the private sector, I mean, developments would come more or less per unit. So you can't say I'll build 300 units and not make money before I build the next 300 units and make money.
Okay.
It's difficult to do that because a lot of things can change within the period, right? Being in the industry for a while, just even looking at the currency, where 80% of the things you're buying are imported because you can't get the local demand for it. If you are planning exactly what you said, probably 2 years ago, and the exchange rate was 6, and today the exchange rate is 12, you can immediately tell that you're not going to make that happen right there because that has just changed the dynamics all of a sudden. So if you look at it from a long-term perspective, it's mostly a per unit cost perspective.
Okay.
So that single house I'm selling to you, am I making money off it? And if I can make money at that house, I can build more of those. So I can't say I'm going to build 300 homes just as a kind of entry period and not make money off those 300 homes. Then I hope to make money on the next 300 homes. That will be kind of a challenge to do. So in this market, it's a little bit different to think of it from that perspective.
But we do understand, per the statistics there, that 12.7 of the houses that were available were vacant. Isn't that money going, because of course, okay, you are here. If the houses were vacant in 2021 and say they were vacant in 2022, 2023, isn't the developer losing?
So there are a number of things to that. I mean, this number has to be kind of delved into a little bit deeper, right? So 12.7% vacant asset, is it owned by the developer or the developer has sold it? And the people that have bought it want to rent it or bought it as an investment and want to resell. And that's what has happened. So it depends. Now, also for the developer perspective, if you're holding them, the question becomes if you have them as vacant, it's because you cannot sell. The fact that you cannot sell doesn't necessarily mean you should make a loss out of it because it's still an asset. The nice thing about real estate is that everything you hold, every time you're holding, it's an asset, right? And so if you're holding from 2021 to this date, most likely it has held its value if you put in dollar terms, or it's grown in value depending on what's happening in the area. So you can't just offload it just like that because you're not getting the money again. Because that means you're going to make a loss and you can't get the asset appreciation value out of it.
So it is a reason why you hold it till it's sold.
Again, it all depends on your development plan. But ideally, yes, if you are in to make profit, you have to look at it from that perspective. But you can hold it till you sell it.
But how do we break that jinx of trying to build for the low end? You've said that whoever is able to do that will be a billionaire. But how do we do it? Because look, we've been having this discussion for a very long time.
Yes.
The problems still persist. So why haven't we been able to break that code of trying to build for the low end people?
I think it's a step-by-step process, and that's why DASEV and maybe Special Gardens and other folks I've worked with are starting from someplace. Everything you have to start somewhere. When I came here with a different company before, about 6-8 years ago, what we decided to look at is where can we make money in real estate, right? There were US investors, they needed to make sure they make money. We looked at various ways. You can go to the high-end area and make money immediately, right? But there's also risk with the high-end. So, more money, slightly more risk. There's also the mid area and then there's the low end. So we look at it and we look at the low end. The low end requires you to be a little bit more efficient. You have to it has to be a well-oiled machine as a production team or as a developer to get it right?
Okay.
So if it costs you $20,000 or 20,000 cedis or 200,000 cedis to build this unit, can you replicate it? And what happens in 6 months if the price of wood changes or the price of your doors changes? How do you still maintain it so that you can keep building it? Because if you bought a house next to me at 250,000 cedis and the next 10 person is buying it for 350, it's a little bit tricky, right? Unless the whole area's value is appreciating, next person. But may have to sell the next one for 350 because a few factors changed when I was building that one.
Yeah.
So how do we hold that value for a period is kind of the challenge. But I think overall, what we have to think about is this. As a developer, if you keep going through the process and you can make money out of it, then that could be the path forward for you in general.
Interesting. Because I've still not been able to understand why, but you've explained anyway. So how do we do it? By a collaboration between government and private sector? Can that happen? I
think if you look at what's happening around the world, that's what's basically the best way out. Because government can facilitate certain things that make things happen. When it comes to the private sector, what we can do is do the best possible. So if we are building, the reason why we went for mid-markets is because we looked at numbers, we can do it a little bit more at scale and we can make money. So Special Gardens is one of the best developments right now that we are coming up with, and it's about 240 units at a pretty reasonable price. I won't call it affordable, I call it modestly priced, right? So that's where we are making our money in. But assuming, let's say, the cost of land or the cost of infrastructure. One of the reasons why Special Gardens is good is that we are investing a lot in infrastructure. So covered drainages, underground cables. So all our electric poles, everything is underground, right? If I look at my infrastructure cost, it's a huge percentage of the overall cost of the development. How could I have made that gone down? If, for example, my transformer I need for that particular development can be provided by government through ECG at a certain price, I could have reduced my price by a certain percentage more. If, for example, when we secure the land, about 20 acres of land, government says, because we want this to be part of the community, we're going to do all the roads, infrastructure, everything for you, but this is also what we want out of that. That could have also reduced my costs per unit significantly. Because now I'm adding all of that to it. Somebody tells me, oh, but if I look at your price, I could take that money and build my own house at a cheaper price. I say, yeah, but when you build your own house, you don't want to build drainage from here to here. I'm building drainage, I'm building roads. All those things are in. But if government could do that, that could help with that. So yes, there's always the need for partnership. But government is also stretched, so you can't put it all on it. So we have to start from somewhere, and that's why most developers are starting from either the high or the mid. A few are trying very well on the low end of things, and they're also doing okay. But there's a lot to be desired in that space. And whoever can break that jinx makes the money. And we are looking at that. We are heavily looking at it. We have to come strategically in terms of how we approach that. And again, it's not about doing it haphazardly, because what's interesting is that even on the low end now, there's taste. People want something. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes the low end even have more demands than the mid or the high end, right? And sometimes their demand is also realistic. It's just because every bit of time that takes away from what they have to go and try and earn is too much for them. As a rich person, you can sometimes afford to spend a day to refix your house. As a rich man, you can't tell your boss that you're not coming to work today, so because you are changing something in your house. So their demands are a little bit, more. And the average Ghanaian person now has a little bit more savviness in terms of what they're looking for in a home.
Well, but I'm sure it is because of what you put in the house that makes it a bit expensive, isn't it? So like the sort of kitchen you put up for the person, the sort of, chairs or furniture you put in there. Why not take away all of that and just build a structure? Let the low-end person come buy it and then put you in your own furniture and all of that.
Very interesting, because we actually looked at that in terms of what we call shell or core and shell development. Mm-hmm. Again, the average Ghanaian also wants a good community to live in. We all need a safety. You need a place you can really call home. Mm-hmm. Now, that is still a path forward and still possible, because what we need now is to make sure the supply is there for the person who buys it. Mm-hmm. So if I give you a shell, can I make sure you get the tiles that will fit? Can I make sure you get the right quality of doors, windows, and other things that would help you to move forward? And can it be at a price that would allow you to do it quickly? Because if I sell you a shell and you fix your shell and you are living in, and all the people around you are not fix their shell and their weeds are growing because they can't move in, then all of a sudden it's not a community, right? Because you won't move into that community. So when you leave part of the work on for somebody else to do it, then it's similar to those who are just building, in various parts of Accra where they start and they stop, and others start and stop, and then all of a sudden you have to protect yourself. But if you're trying to be in a well-planned community, that becomes slightly different. And I think what Ghana needs now is more well-planned communities. I think just the idea of everybody just building today you build here, tomorrow there's a church here, tomorrow there's this here, tomorrow there's that here, tomorrow somebody decides to do a store here and all that stuff. It doesn't make us look great overall in terms of how we are developing real estate. So communities are necessary. And when communities are being planned, then we have to think of how do you actually unlock the community? How does the community become livable? And to look at all those factors, if you give somebody a shell, how long would it take them to finish? If it's 3 years, that means that community is not livable for 3 years.
Okay.
And maybe somebody's ready to do their shell in 3 months. So how do you find the 3 months people? How do you put the 3 years people at the other phase and stuff like that? That overall plan is necessary to do it right.
So I was looking at the aesthetics is probably the what you can look at to complete so that the community looks like it's a complete one.
Okay.
But when it comes to the internal
parts, okay,
where you would give me a furniture, the kitchen, you put 7. For example, in my home now, I don't have this sort of, I see, forgive me, but from where I'm coming from afar. So you'd have to, but the sort of modern things that are in some kitchen now, I don't have it.
Okay.
So someone like me, I'm looking for, you give me the structure, let me come in there and do what I can in terms of finishing. So maybe I will need just a 2-in-1 chair.
For now.
I have my TV there and all of that. What I need is a roof over my head. Why can't we look at it from that point so that you construct something like that and then the tenant or whoever is coming to buy or rent will then finish it
and do the rest
to his taste and his pocket as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually doable. So basically on the outside everything looks almost complete.
Yes,
on the
inside, security at the door, but then on the inside is
bare bones as much as possible. No, I think some developers are doing that. To give credit to some folks, they are doing that. Again, the market speaks, right? You may do that and not sell well because it's very difficult for people to envisage what you've sold to them, right? If you give them that bare thing, they're thinking, how well would my TV be? Where would this be? Even almost finishing it without furniture, people sometimes can't envisage what things work for them. So depending on what price that would be, they'll be thinking, okay, now I have to spend all this money to do this, and this is not really a house. They'll look for other options. But to be honest, it's a market that's out there, and depending on what price point you can put that at, that's something that people will be interested in. And if you are speaking about it and others are speaking about it, maybe that's a place we have to focus on next.
Exactly, do. Because you have a lot of my kind.
Okay.
Who would rather want a roof, do it that we can afford. We come and buy it. The rest will do it.
Yes.
Because look, our wives would even say, okay, no problem. Let's put the mattress on the floor for now and stay in whilst we try to, and because if you're looking at people who earn like I do, and even us, we are the middle class, isn't it?
Yeah.
And people below us, if you put up that option, I'm sure you will get millions, and that's breaking the code.
That's part of
trying to get the access to the 1.8 million people to buy the houses.
And that's part of these conversations that help us to all think of it.
Okay.
Because based on what you've just said, I mean, that shows there's a market out there for that possibility as well. I mean, there are other factors that has to be considered, safety, how good, because if you're doing that, you're still controlling the community.
Yeah.
So if somebody puts in the wrong appliances and everything and something happens. Then
okay.
there's also a side to it. But we can write a code, we can write things and make some guidelines for people to follow and let it kind of flow through in that regard. So there are a number of ways. But to be honest, in the end, overall, if you look at it from an industry perspective, it's still a higher cost. Because if you are buying just one refrigerator and somebody's just buying one oven, everybody's just buying one, within, let's say, even a community of 200, you're all going to buy at different prices. And you have skill and kind of the leverage we would have as a developer to buy 200 of them. So in the end, if you're looking at the quality will buy and the price will buy when there being something similar to the lower quality you buy because you're buying a one. So would it help you as an individual? Yes. Would it help the industry as a whole grow faster? I'm not too sure yet. Okay. The data and the numbers would say, but there'll be more need for some market research to see how that works out.
Because I'm thinking about the 1.8 and what we can do to break it. And I think that what we can do to break it is probably just put the structure and leave the internal decorations and all of that to ourselves. Because you go and buy a very sophisticated kitchen material. When I come in there, probably that's not what I need. I need my fridge and my cooker somewhere, and I'm very okay, because the number of people who don't have accommodation is quite staggering.
Yes.
And if we have some houses, and then the truth is that if you go to, Chado and all and what have you, there are some structures there that have not been sold.
Yes.
So the money that went into building those ones, very sophisticated ones, could probably put up about 4 simple structures for people like me and my camera guys here. For us,
you guys can buy more expensive.
No, we can buy expensive ones because even the bank is not willing to give you a loan that will help you buy the expensive. So build for us.
Yeah.
And I think that's the sort of conversation we should have as a country. Is that government is overburdened, so probably we cannot put everything on the government. But could you guys be creative enough to think about us as well?
Yeah.
So that we can have our structures to sleep in, and then we can reduce this deficit. People sleep on the street, not because it's because they can't afford the rent that I mean. But if I buy a house which is quite cheap and I can give it to them for maybe 100 cedis a month, maybe you can reduce the number of people who are sleeping in kiosks and on the street.
That's true. That's true. There are a number of other factors to look at in relation to that to make sure it happens. I mean, if we have to look at the overall percentage cost of actually the finishing. Forget furniture. We hardly even sell homes with furniture these days, right? Those are all things you pay after the fact for. But let's talk about finishing itself. So the actual tiling, all the other things that go inside those. To be honest, if you're making the aesthetic on the outside look good, the inside, what's left, is also a big percentage of the cost. It's not really much of a big percentage of the cost. Per square meter, it could add up, but we have very efficient ways of making that a little bit more less costly. But yes, appliances and stuff, even a few years ago, were not the main things that we supplied. Most of the times, you bought a home with those things a little bit empty. We just created some counter space, and then we left the place open for you to kind of add it in there. I've looked at the data over the past years, and it's again, we end up getting more leverage to buy in bulk and make the cost per unit cheaper. So we are probably better off adding that folks to get them to buy it, because my price points won't come down so much. I'll give you a very typical example. With our current developments, again, as Special Gardens, I have other developments across Accra, Tema, and Kumasi as well that folks can look up to as well. But if, for example, somebody comes and says, look, I have my own taste. I really want to have my own thing. I only like Maytag or some other type of brand, and that's all they want to use in there. So get all the things out for me and let us do. To be honest, when I do the calculations for them, it's not even worth it. But the most important thing is that I've already pre-ordered or plan to pre-order a big chunk of stuff. So if I remove one out of it, it doesn't change price that much. So in the end, we probably will charge them the same price, but tell them to bring their own finishing items. So if I think of it from that data perspective, so for us, you're letting the outside look pretty okay and good. And if the outside has to look pretty okay and good, that means all the other things has to be done in terms of all the first and second fixes, all the other things that have to be done, the piping, wiring, all those things have to be done if you're trying to make all the other things look good overall. So if we are giving you just let's say, screeded floors only, no appliances and all that stuff, I don't think the percentage will hit the big number.
Oh, okay.
So it won't necessarily reduce your price that much.
So how can we then do it?
I think it's going to be a partnership between government and developers, and it's going to require government not being a partner by trying to dictate, but being a partner by listening hard. And I'm not saying listening to developers, because frankly, developers don't have all the answers. It's the consumers that have the answers. I'm a very consumer-centric consultant in terms of how I do it. I look at things from what the consumers are thinking. What will make somebody pay money for something? And how much do they have to pay for that thing, right? We have to create value for every bracket of the industry in general and of the consumers in general in terms of what it is. So on the very low end of things, you're looking at majority probably government workers and people below a certain salary bracket. What are their needs? That will require us to look at more, shall I say, more type of facilities, right? Where even if it's really nicely done, it has shared common facilities like shared baths and all the stuff, if necessary. But depending on location, depending on how much that location is expensive in terms of land and all that stuff, it may be necessary for that. And to your point, that somebody just wants a good place to lay their head and move forward versus sleeping on the streets or in their cars, which is happening in Ghana, surprisingly, right? So it will be about looking at what are the consumers looking for and what will make them pay for something. And then if they are paying at that price, what can government and the private sector and developers come together to see how do we reduce that cost so that we can get to that bottom line. It will also be about efficiencies, right? Is block work the most efficient way of building? We have to continue that way. And should we do something different? Those are all the technologies of building, are all things we have to look at and see what we can do. Is a prefab homes that we have to look at. Those are all things that a lot of developers are trying. People are trying to see how whether that could change the dynamics. And we have to keep trying. The answer is there.
Well, I mean, some time ago last year, government launched a certain project that they were looking for private investors. The government was partnering them to invest into a housing scheme in one of these communities around Accra. And I think this is the way they were going about it. But how much would that reduce it to make it even affordable to the low? Because I'm looking at the low end, because these are where the numbers are. These are where a lot of people are struggling to get accommodation in the urban areas. Yes.
Look, I haven't thought about this thoroughly for a while. I think it's going to be a mixture of both. Again, the low end gives you a certain margin, and not everybody will go to that end. It requires, like I said, a very, very well-oiled machine in terms of how to produce. We have to look at even the data in terms of how we produce. We have to look at the process in terms of how we produce, the project management processes. To be honest, nothing against any university per se, but most of our trained building technology folks, construction majors, all those people, you hardly see them on sites.
Okay, where are they?
In the office. In the office, in the air condition. Purely on sites. If you try and go to the site and tell, the architects, they're like well-trained folks, to be on site and watch what a mason is doing, he'll be there for like an hour and he's gone at max. So who's actually the one doing the job?
Oh, okay.
The one doing the job is the folks we call off the streets, come and do masonry and stuff.
So we need those graduates on the field. Is that what you're saying?
We need them on the field because that's where you learn the efficiencies.
Okay.
That's where you learn the things we can stop doing in the wrong way and find to do in the right way. There's nothing that you keep watching and trying to figure a way to do better that you won't find a way to do it better, right? So we need that practical experience. Frankly, in the developed world or other parts of the world, a person who's probably laying blocks could have a degree or a master's.
Is that what will help us in reducing the cost?
Not overall. It's a number of factors, but we have to look at each one of them, right? And this is one of the issues in terms of how are we being efficient in the production of homes. Because if you can produce something faster, better, and cheaper, then can you duplicate it 100 or 200 fold to get to the numbers you're talking about?
Okay.
Who can lay down the processes and tell us this is the best way to lay blocks? I'm giving you a very typical example. By even just simple things like wiring. What is our standard and best way to wire? How is our code being adhered to when it comes to other things, right? Those are all things we have to think about. And if we can just make that blueprint easy, then as soon as you are getting it, the next person is looking at it, they add a new thing, everybody adds a new thing, and we are going to the numbers from there. But we can't expect people who haven't gone to school and haven't learned all these things well, who are just trying to also make it day by day. When we teach them to do this, we can't expect all of them to be able to give us the efficiencies. They won't give us the efficiencies all the time.
So like what we are watching on the screen now, you have a good bathtub, and goes with good kitchen furniture and all of that. I mean, that's what I was arguing, but you said it won't really reduce it that much, in terms of how. But I get your point that if we limit, say, how much we use cement, for example,
right,
because the supervisor is not there, some mason take cement elsewhere. The block is done such a way we have to break a certain structure because we didn't do it well. We have to rework it. All of that comes into costing how much the unit is sold for. So it means that if we're able to reduce some of these inefficiencies,
that's extremely
it will bring the cost down.
Correct. It will bring the cost down, plus it will make the conversation better, because every time we do the numbers, when we get on the ground and do it, it doesn't match. Why does it match? Because what's on the ground doesn't really match to what we put the numbers together on, because it's not efficient on the ground.
Okay.
And we don't even document the process as well. Right? How to follow project schedules, how to make sure we're doing. Most of the time these days, when it rains, no action is happening on sites. And we have quite a number of months of rains. So if your plan is like you have to plan from January to May and June, by June you have to relax until August, September before you. What's happening in that break, right? Because workers are not coming. We haven't figured ways in terms of how to make sure during that rainy period what's the best time to do it.
Have you studied the SNIT model?
The SNIT?
Yeah, where they were building houses, and I think they rent them out to people or even sell. But that's quite affordable.
Yes, but SNIT is government indirectly, right? It's quasi-government. And of course, they have our money.
Yeah.
So that's well capitalization. And everything that's well capitalized can find better ways of doing things.
So could we encourage more of that?
We could encourage more of SNITs. We could encourage more of, and we should encourage more of SNIT. They have to do the numbers and see whether it's working for them. I think the biggest issues from what I remember is basically when they are selling, really what happens next. Who are the ones that buy and at what price, and then whether resales come in and all that stuff. So, but the SNIT model is great. And that's actually a proper government, private sector minded way of doing things, right? And that's mass housing in terms of trying to fix things from a bigger scale of things. I grew up in a SNIT flat in Adenta, so I appreciated that, because that moved us from, we thought when North Kaneshi thought was good, but it moved us to where my family felt that we had a home, and it's our home, right? And grew up on it. And relatively in terms of that became a starter life in terms of it. But the biggest part of what made SNIT, I think, work was the infrastructure.
Okay.
They dealt with the infrastructure, and they worked it out very well. So then we came in. So when we moved to SNIT in Adenta, the roads were all tarred.
Okay.
Gutters were not covered, but at least there were gutters. So there was no flooding issues and a few things that we felt comfortable in terms of living in. There was no water then anyway, but now there's water. But they kind of worked around it. So yes, the SNIT model works. That's a proper government, private sector minded way of doing things. And the capitalization was there. Now they have to look to see, are we making money out of it, and is it working well? And actually SNIT does similar things in Botima, where the inside is basically nothing.
Yes.
So exactly what you said.
You come in there and
finish all that stuff. It works out. But just like you are saying, if SNIT is doing it, I'm sure if it could work on the private sector and it could make money as much as possible, the private sector would have been also doing it as much. Maybe it could. Maybe SNIT has to teach us a few things where we learn from that and do it as well to make money. Because SNIT is supposed to make money for us anyway with all of that. I don't know if that's happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, quite interesting. The conversation is about Ghana's housing situation now, and what we need to do to find that solution. We need to break that code.
Yeah.
But I mean, SNIT did it. Are we saying
some part
that?
Of it. Not all of it, but SNIT did some, yes. SNIT was not as low as we need to be in some cases.
Okay.
Yes, but SNIT did it. Okay. If you look at, and I could be wrong here, if you look at some of the things that happened with SNITs, the profits always never went to those who really needed it. Went to the directors and the big senior people.
They were buying it and reselling.
Correct.
And even renting.
Correct.
So what it means is that, well, SNIT can do it, but we also have to look at the selling. Who are the beneficiaries? Even today, state housing. Sometimes I'm asking myself, okay, so who are the people buying the state housing, the houses? But can't we also develop a system where, for example, you buy one plot, maybe say 90 by 80, and on that plot you could have about 5 chamber and halls, very, modest. And you sell that. If I want to buy, I'll come there, because it's I'm sure it will be very, very affordable. I could buy that without looking at whether I'm the owner of the land. I own a house, and that's my house. Can't we also look at that as well?
To be honest, that's about 80% of the market. You see, when developers, I have worked with a lot of developers, and I realize that...
You mean that's 80% of the current market?
Of developers, of developments, yes.
Today?
Yes.
I mean, you have one plot, and you have about 5 of that on it.
Yes. Well, we have individuals trying to build on various plots.
Okay.
Either to sell or for themselves. Yes. Or to rent out. That's a lot of the markets. You know what I mean? We don't have... Does that give you the efficiencies? I don't know. I don't think so. But we don't have a situation... We have a lot of situation where with developers, we are not really competing against each other. Because when you go to the market and see what the real challenge is, it's about individuals building themselves. And then building maybe an extra one to sell. And their price points are lower. Right? Because they don't use the overheads that a developer would have. So it's already happening in a sense. And
that's on an individual basis.
Yes.
But I'm looking at you, the companies that can build a lot of units. So for example, yes, you, a company like you buy a plot, and on the plot, instead of having just a house, you have about 5 or 6 simple structures.
That's exactly what we do. So I'll say, I mean, go to specialhomesltd.com or call us at 02013812234 and see what we are doing there. We are building structures from a gated plan community where, if you look at the plots, so for example, most of our units are 22 by 70. In terms of plot size, 22 by 70. So if you think of it from a plot, we are building about 4 or 5 units on it. So we're building a townhome concept, so they are attached terrace homes. And then we're doing semi-detached as well. The demand, though, for those who may have a little bit more money is mostly on the detached side. They just want a house on their own. We call it compound house. I don't know why we've always said it that way, and that's it. I'm not going to compound.
There's a word, right?
Yes. So for some reason, we want that. We're still very traditional. But it's changing. To be honest, it's changing. I mean, a few years ago, or probably 10 years ago, everybody wants to build a big 5-bedroom house. Now people are thinking twice about that, right? But we still want compound. We still want our own stuff. And it was a big challenge breaking through the townhome concepts, which is basically, one plot of land having 6 to 7 units on it, all kind of attached, limited, land in front of your house with some parking and everything like that. But I think that's the future, because number one, it helps you with a lot of security and allows us to do more. And biggest challenge we have as well is our use of land per acre, right? We are trying to build as much as possible per acre. From a development planning, what we're doing at Special Gardens and other developments I'm part of, we are actually building about 17 units per acre. So that's significant. That's because in the US it's between 12 to 17. So we are basically there in terms of what we are doing.
How much is a unit?
So our units actually start, depending on what you're looking at, from about 1.2 million Ghana cedis.
That's way above our residents still.
Well, so we are mid-markets. I like to admit that from the word go. We are mid-market. We're looking at for, middle. Even when I say mid-market, it's not middle income. From a big Ghana perspective, it's kind of the middle of the market, right? Because even middle income is a little bit below that in terms of those who earn the stuff. But we are mid-markets. But we're also a source of we're source of kind of the initial part of changing the market in terms of letting people understand that you don't have to always live in one big house on your own. You don't always have to have just a compound house. And that trend is helping. So your approach has always been to do it from the bottom up, which is kind of the best and easiest way to do it. Sometimes some of us are thinking of doing it from the middle down. And how do we kind of push it down? We're not at the top. A lot of people are already doing it at the top and they're making their money, but we are trying to look at it from the middle down in terms of making the change. Yes.
Okay. So will it be very difficult for you to decide that, we are getting there. Let's calm down a bit and probably build very simple structures for some of us to come and buy. Very simple structure of, this is my chamber, this is my hall. I have my washroom and something. Not too big.
Yes.
Something that we can afford and call our home.
Yes.
To maybe to start off.
That would actually go back to similar to a SNIT model. Because if I do that just on a piece of land, I'm wasting the land. Because per unit, per acre is not good enough. So you talked about the one plot 90 by 100, and I do exactly what you're saying. I'm even able to put 8 on it. Depending on where the land is, I've wasted the land a bit. But imagine if I go...
You're going up anyway, but is that those simple...
So that's exactly... So if you go up, SNIT normally goes up 4 levels because they want to put elevators. What can we do about incentivizing elevators and making elevators duty-free so that people can then do more elevators? And then we can go and add elevators and go all the way to 6 or 8, and then from there we go even higher. Of course, it will require more structural work and people to think beyond just building a regular 4-level stuff. But if we can put all the right people in place and go further up, then that becomes proper mass housing. And that's necessary. That's kind of the future in terms of what we're doing. And we are looking at that strongly. In terms of, which areas can we do that at? Unfortunately, everything starts in Accra somehow, so we are here. but we're just fortunate or unfortunate anyway. But it is what it is in terms of, can we do that from a different section in a different part of Accra as well? And would people want to live in a flat? From what I'm gathering, when people are out of Accra, nobody will even think of a flat anymore. So we have to change our mindsets as well. But to be honest, it's all about incentives. What are the incentives that will make the developers do more of these? What are the partnerships that are able to be created to make it happen? I get bothered when government wants to do affordable housing and wants to be in the housing market on their own when they don't have the experience as much as it. And well, from a lot of the affordable housing things that have been done, we know a lot of them that are just sitting idle. So the question becomes, why does it always have to be government, right? Though they have a kind of SNIT that has done it and has some knowledge around it, we have to look at it from a point of view of how do we partner with other folks to let them do what they are doing, but give them incentives to do the rest. I talked about the I call it MDPs, marginally priced dwelling units. So if you look at that, again, 20 acres, I'm building a whole development of 240 homes. If I give you 20% of that, that's about, get it, 40 homes. If government can give us an incentive such that, let's say, if you're able to provide 40 of these homes at a price point, half the price you provide your regular home. So instead of my 1.2 million, where it starts from, should I provide that at, let's say, 700,000 or 800,000? Based on that incentive, I get 2 years tax holidays. Okay. Or I get to bring anything I want to bring in free for that period, if I can provide at that point. And we have structures in place through other government or other ways where we note who's buying that and at what price. When you buy those homes, you can't just resell. If you're going to resell, it has to go back to somebody within the same bracket to what you sold it for. But what helps with me as a developer is that then I get a community that's mixed well. So if I need a babysitter, if somebody in my community needs a babysitter, there's this guy who works that's a little bit low and wouldn't mind be a babysitter. But if you're all high class and you're living there, now I'm having some type of babysitters my that I don't want. You know what I mean? Because they are not around the same, I wouldn't.
But you see, the only problem is that when usually we do say that when government gives businessmen or business people the incentives, it doesn't trickle down to the ordinary Ghanaian who should be the ultimate beneficiary. The businessman is interested in maximizing profit. So when that leeway or the room is given, he keeps it to him or herself. And that's why it's difficult for some of these things to be granted.
Well, if you give me a blanket incentive as a businessman, unfortunately, I have to look at it from where I maximize profits. Okay. That's why I talked about this particular scheme, which is not blanket. Okay. It specifies what you have to do. Okay. So you're gonna list those 40 units for me. You're gonna tell me the price you're gonna sell it for. Okay. And I'm gonna give you a pool of people you're gonna sell to. Okay. And the rules are there in terms of we give people sublease and.
Let's see. That'll be interesting. Let's see how that goes. But you mentioned a number. We didn't get it well. If you can take your time and then we get it.
Yeah. That reaches mostly directly to me and my team. But that gives us a chance to be able to talk to folks who want to buy homes. That's what I call moderately priced homes. Okay. And developments in general that we are part of. 020-138-1234. That's 020-138-1234. It's as easy as 1234. So remember that 1234. And it's 020-138-1234. Okay. Visit any of our developments. You can visit us at diasefgroup.com or visit specialhomesltd.com. That's specialhomeslimited.com to see one of our main developments that we're thinking to make a change in terms of it. All right. We're just not building homes. We are also looking at the community infrastructure, features, other things that would help.
Ebi, it's been good having you.
Pleasure.
I pray that we do have more of this conversation.
Definitely.
Right. Let's see where this takes us. Grateful.
Thank you.